Well, it's the podcast, the Bob McCown podcast. Yours truly, along with John Shannon.
Is that am I in the title yet?
No, you're not even being featured yet.
I was not this is the second week where I'm not featured. I'm with
you, and it's our Friday roundtable and hockey pucks everywhere joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, and I was going to say lower left of the screen, but I'm not even sure how this appears. Jimmy HUGHSON of Hockey Night in Canada is with us from the bubble, and Darren Pang of Fox Sports Midwest is with us. Not in the bubble, Panger?
Nope.
No.
Not in the bubble. No, not in the bubble. I'm at the lake house in Michigan, and I'm getting ready to go off to New Jersey to NHL Network for 7 or 8 dates.
Nice. Would you like to be in the bubble?
No, I really.
I don't blame you.
I tell you what, I admire what Jimmy and everybody's done, but I like the way we did it. We did the Blues first round and the preliminary games, and we were in a studio in St. Louis, golfed in the morning, did the game at night, had a couple of cold ones afterwards with the guys. I thought that was perfectly fine for now.
And I'm not officially in a bubble here. I'm in my own bubble. They have the league, in its wisdom, the way they organize this, have 5 different levels of security, basically, and I'm number 5. So I have absolutely no contact with anyone who's actually in the bubble. I'm not allowed, but I can go in the arena. I do a temperature check, wear my mask, and go and sit on the 300 level in Scotiabank Arena and do the game. And then they ask you to kindly get out as soon as the game's over.
So let me get this straight. So there's no glass of wine in the Platinum Lounge?
There's no lights on in the Platinum Lounge.
It must be different.
The first couple of days, they actually had a concession open with coffee and a couple of meals that you could buy. And then they found that none of the media bought that stuff, so they closed it. You can't even get a glass of water in there right now.
Wow.
Well, I don't find that the least bit surprising. Those of us in the media are a bunch of cheap bastards anyway. So
they wanted it free. They didn't want to pay for it. They wanted it free.
And that's the point. I mean, some of us are old enough to remember when you'd go to a game and you did get fed. I mean, it may have been rat food, but it was something to eat, and you got it for nothing. And then all of a sudden they started charging, and of course, we cheap bastards just said that.
The first NHL game I ever went to was at Maple Leaf Gardens. The press room was in the way up in the corner, and Bobby Haggert's mother used to make sandwiches with the crusts cut off, and that was. I'm serious. Bobby Haggert's mother used to make the tuna salad, the egg salad, the ham and cheese, and they had the little triangles that you put milk, and then when you saw Milt Dunn do it, you knew it was okay to do it.
I had the good fortune of broadcasting my first ever NHL game was at the Montreal Forum, and. Oh, wow. Of course, they had the finest hot dogs in the world. And as a 20-year-old single guy, I didn't want to leave the press room. They're going to stay here all night and eat these.
No, that's a funny story about the Montreal Forum. John, you might remember this. I'll take you back to a Montreal Forum story. 93, Jean Beliveau, I believe, was raising the banner. ESPN2, The Deuce, was doing their very first game in the Montreal Forum. The late Tom Mees, rest in peace, Tom. He was a great man. Didn't like the idea that we had to wear casual clothes. He got to the morning skate and he had a suit on. And they told him, you can't wear a suit. You've got to wear casual clothes. So our producer went out and got him like a Gap jean shirt and a little vest or whatever. And as he's walking on the catwalk, he runs into a couple of the great broadcasters of the Canadians at the time, and they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Tommy. Did your luggage not make it in time?" And they were all in tuxedos and all. And that was my first broadcast there in the Montreal Forum. So you're having hot dogs, and I'm dealing with Tom Mees wearing a jeans shirt. So it's 2 different moments, I think.
I don't want to dwell on food, but my recollection of the old Maple Leaf Gardens was Stan Abodiak would order a couple of pizzas in. Isn't that how it used to go, Shanny?
As I said, I think that was later. This was 1974, and I remember the little triangle sandwiches. Well, yeah, absolutely.
I don't
Why is
remember.
And the fascination then was, and it's because sports is always accused of being an old boys club. There were at least 30 men in the room, all smoking except me, I swear, and Christy Blatchford, the late great Christy Blatchford, who had just been hired to replace Dick Beddoes as a columnist for the Globe and Mail.
Can I ask you this, John? Why is it that when someone says you cut the crust off of little sandwiches, it just reminds me of Canada so much? Is that just my memories of being a kid, or is that for everybody?
Either that or the Empress Hotel in Victoria for 3:00 tea.
Yes.
There you go.
I don't recall Harold Ballard ever feeding anybody.
Oh yeah.
I remember pizza, Hughie.
Yeah.
I remember going in and they'd have some, dried up cold pizza. They'd throw a few boxes on the table, and then of course there was a mad dash for them. And if you didn't get there right at the beginning of the period.
So here's the fascination. We have 3 series going, the best of 7. It's a strange year to talk hockey, and we're talking about food in the press room.
I don't know how we got on.
Yeah.
Let's
Every
move
time
along.
you mentioned the pizza, I keep thinking of old Joe Louis Arena and the little Caesars that was there. I mean, everybody. It's as soon as Lisa put that pizza down, we all were scarfing that down.
Well, no, that's why
the hottest piece.
It was the post game stuff that said that she did special ones for Mickey Redmond, so I never left.
Right. In the back little room back
in the
there.
back room. That's right.
Yes.
Pizza and beer.
Once.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we are trying to get what round is this?
2. This is officially 2.
Okay, right. All right. This is very 2, but sort of 3. We're trying to get this over with, and there are 6 teams that are not cooperating in any way, shape, or form. And meanwhile, Tampa Bay is sitting around twiddling their thumbs. And we do this every year, but I'm always intrigued by the question. Huey, to you first. If you're Tampa, well, you got no choice now. You're going to play Tuesday, I think.
Monday.
Monday. You'll have sat around for a week or more. Do you want that or do you not want that? And especially in the environment that they're in.
I just I get the impression from everything I've heard from inside the bubble that the players are really enthusiastic about playing. Like they'd go 2 a day if they could. Play now. Let's get this going. Let's get out of here. They want the integrity of the tournament. They want to play. They want to win a Stanley Cup. But this is an awful long time to be sequestered in a bubble. So I think for the Tampa guys, they were probably thinking that because the Islanders had a 3-1 lead at some point in that series and they had a couple of chances to end it, that they'd be playing on Saturday. Now they're going to have to travel to the Edmonton bubble and play Monday. That's the hand they're dealt. And they'll be ready, but I can guarantee you that they're ready to play. Now, having said that, there's a couple of guys we don't know about, and you're never finding out about injuries here, but maybe by extending this a couple of days, they have a healthy Nikita Kucherov, and there's an outside chance that Steven Stamkos re-enters it. If those things happen, and then the Tampa Bay Lightning are thrilled that they're waiting till Monday. But under normal circumstances, everybody healthy, I think everybody just wants to play.
Yeah, I can reiterate that, fellas. When I talked to the Blues players, when they first got there, they had an exhibition game, and then they had the three round robin games, and they were spread out in 15 days. And they just lost a lot of energy and a lot of mojo, because there was a little bit more for the guys to do in Toronto outside than there was for the guys in Edmonton. And I think the guys that went to Edmonton at first really thought there was going to be other things set up for them. I think when that presentation came on board, I think they thought that they could get the team out to the golf course during that round robin. They could go fishing, they could do some things, but they did none of that. And so I do agree with you, Huey. They just want to get to the rink. They just want to play. Yeah. And because there's just boredom sets in, and they start thinking, and then they got one foot out the door, and that's not good.
It is reminiscent of a minor hockey tournament where you played. Hey, how many times did you play 4 games in a day, Darren, when you were a midget? But at the same time, nobody, and this doesn't happen in the playoffs very often anyway, but nobody wants to practice. Nobody wants to go put their stuff on and not play for something that means it. So just playing every second day is the best option, or in certain situations, back-to-backs is the best option for the guys.
Never been a better option for back-to-backs than in this environment, because you're not traveling anywhere. You can go 10 minutes, you can be back at a hotel and get some sleep. For injured guys, I get it. The practice time is just for the Black Aces now. The regulars aren't spending any time on the ice.
Right.
It's just time to roll them on out. And I would say this too, that from what I understand, and again, I'm outside the bubble, so some of the things that I'm hearing about it are anecdotal. But this is because of the way this has worked. I think everybody has a great appreciation of what the NHL has done here, and they've been positive test free, and they've done as good a job as you could possibly do under the circumstances organizing this. And we're going to have a Stanley Cup champion. I suppose there's a little risk in moving the bubble and moving 100 and maybe more than a couple hundred people between Toronto and Edmonton. So there's that. But I guess my point would be that when you look down the road and see modeling for what the NHL is going to do in the future, I'm not sure that there's going to be a player appetite for any more bubbles.
Right. Hey, I got a question for you, Jim. Do you think that it's actually an advantage for Tampa to have a change of scenery? You talk about. I mean, those guys have whoever they're going to play in the Stanley Cup final and who's playing in the West have been in that situation in Edmonton since July 26th. Tampa now, they get on a bus, albeit that it's quarantine. They get on a bus, they get on a charter, they get out of town. So there's at least a change of scenery at some point. Is that an advantage?
Well, I don't think it hurts them. I would say, and again, anecdotally, look at the reaction to the Islanders when they just changed hotels in Toronto. They thought, this is a good day. We're moving to a different hotel. It's something different. I get the four walls around me are going to be a little bit different. I think that's just, it's just natural that the Lightning would find that it's kind of refreshing to go somewhere else for a change, instead of being in the same hotel room doing the same things every day. So yeah, I don't know if it's an advantage for them, but it'll probably make them feel a little better.
We spend so much time talking about home ice advantage during a normal year, and not just in hockey, but in all sports. Here's what I know statistically, that home team wins 54% of the time in an average year. If you go through a lengthy procedure of us examining all teams, good and bad, all sports, 54% is the number. Some years it's 52, some years it might be 56, but it's right in that ballpark. Will we look at home ice advantage differently in the future, given what we've seen in this environment where, okay, you get the last change, okay, you get to wear your home uniforms, but other than that, Panger, it ain't home.
Yeah, it has changed, hasn't it? And I think, Bob, that a lot of the really good teams are now built differently. They're not built top six exclusively. And those top six forwards are playing 20 through 24 minutes. I mean, the Blues won last year on a fourth line that on any given night was their first line. So they could match up the Steen line with any of the top lines on any given night, whether they were home or away. I think.
And won the Stanley Cup on the road.
And the pressures of being at home in Game 6 and everybody's planning a party, and the emotion of St. Louis was so high. But then Boston had another plan, and they ruined Gloria and the whole thing. And, so I thought home ice advantage in Game 6 was going to be to the Blues advantage. And sure enough, it didn't work out that way at all. Boston did what you do on the road. They made it a very quiet building. And once the building gets quiet, then you just can't seem to get it going, because you can feel the angst from the fans as well. So in answering your question, Bob, I just think that the way that the teams are built now in order to win is a little bit different, and maybe not so based on home ice advantage and hard matchups. But I think going back against that again, I'm going to go the other way. If you're a hard matchup team and that's what you have, and you have horses on the back end that can match up against other teams best, well, I think it's to your advantage that you get last change and you get to get that hard matchup. But we don't seem to see as much as that anymore.
No, I think you're right, Banger. I would say just look at the teams that are still in. New York Islanders' fourth line plays against anybody. You get your defensive matchups, whether you're home or on the road, and teams are really good now at making sure they've got their top defensemen on the ice, whether they're on the road, or it doesn't matter where they're playing. You can get your defensive matchups, and you don't worry so much about the hard serial matching that some coaches have done in the past. And I think you're right that it's about the depth of teams and the way they're built. And the teams that are surviving in this particular tournament are pretty much all like that. There's nobody you're calling off the ice because you're afraid of the matchup. There's just not much of that left. There may be a few teams when this tournament started that were like that, but they got knocked out.
So Jimmy, in the East, you've seen almost every game in the East. In the East, is there one guy that has stood out for you that says, hey, this is the most I've ever seen him play in a short period of time, and he's better than I thought. He really is better.
Point.
Really, huh?
Brayden Point.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a player. He is fantastic. I didn't realize he's as fast as he is. I knew he was tenacious. I've watched him play. I've watched him play junior. But at this level, playing against the best players in the world, he has been dominant, and his line has been fantastic. And I think he drives that line with Kucherov and Palat. They went up against and played a lot head-to-head against Boston's top line and were better. They were just better, and it was because of him. And then when it came to a real crescendo for me, it was in double overtime in the elimination game where they knocked the Boston Bruins out. When he came out, and I had one of the most determined shifts I've seen in this tournament, he decided that was it. This is going to be over. And you could tell the way he conducted himself on that shift that either they were going to get a power play out of it or he was going to end it. And it turned out that Victor Hedman ended it, but he got it started and got the shift started. So in answer to your question, I knew he was a really, really good player. He's really an elite player, and I think he's been the best player that I've watched in this tournament.
Jimmy, hard to believe on fellas and Bob that Brayden Point's draft year, being as small as he was, it might be the best third-round trade ever made. Steve Yzerman traded down. Right. Steve had somewhere in the 80s, and he traded down to get that to make sure he got Brayden Point. And who would have thought at that particular point that Brayden Point is going to be the player that he is today? That's some great scouting there.
We want to look forward. I don't want to dwell on the past, but since we have you here and since Boston came up in a kind of a roundabout way, this was a team that was the best, as good as anybody during the regular season. Came out for those 3 funny games and didn't look interested, and now makes a quick exit. And I think there were an awful lot of folks at the beginning of this would have picked the Bruins to be the Stanley Cup champions, including Mr. Shannon, who's raising his hand now. Is there any way to explain this other than they just weren't as interested in this whole thing as others were?
You know what?
Not in your head, you don't know, really, huh?
Well, I know. I mean, not that because I know Bruce Cassidy, I've known him for a long time. That what he has said during this whole thing, Bob, is they were all in it. They were all engaged, and just listen to Brad Marchand during and after. They were in. Your number one goalie at the beginning is disinterested, and then says some things, and then he leaves. I love Jaro Halak, but there is a difference game in and game out. And I think Jaro gave them everything they had, but they just weren't getting that big save. And after a while, every shot that went off a glove or just trickled in was another one where it looked like the air was out of the balloons. Listen, I think the St. Louis Blues went in saying the same thing. We're all in it. We're not going to make any excuses for the integrity of winning the Stanley Cup. We're going to go in there and we're going to do our best. It just wasn't there. I think the Boston Bruins gave it everything they had. I just think that there are other teams right now that have a little bit more going on. And Tampa Bay, like when you watch Tampa Bay, for every goal that they score and every time there's a big hit, you look at their bench and there is just total energy. Like, we've got something here that's really special. And it's the same thing. And it reminds me of what I went through last year as a broadcaster with St. Louis. With every move, with every hit, with every save, you could just feel the St. Louis Blues and Boston were absolutely 100% all in, no matter what. And I think some years maybe you just don't have every single guy into it just the way that you need to have it.
Jimmy, one of the things I was going to ask you is that, and you guys talked about depth and fourth liners. I don't think a team missed a fourth liner more than the Boston Bruins missed Sean Corelli.
I agree.
You think of his size and speed.
Yeah.
He's a pretty important player for them because when he and Wagner and Nordstrom were together, there's another fourth line that could play against anybody. Last year in the playoff with Noel Acciari on that line, they were a really big part of the engine that drove the Boston Bruins. But I would agree with Panger too that when you get up against a team like Tampa, which is a really complete team, and you know that their goaltender doesn't make mistakes, that you can't, you're lucky if you can get 3 against Vasilevsky. He is such a good goaltender. You can't be giving up an easy one. And they gave up some easy goals. So, and I don't want to hang this all on Jarl Halak either, but I think in Boston, people will be hanging it on Tuukka Rask. I'm not sure that he can play in that city now, again, because of what sports fans are like and how they will accuse him of abandoning ship. So I think that was the biggest difference. And I did see that Tampa's perfection line was better than Boston's perfection line, but overall, that is a huge difference. Vasilevsky tipped the scales because he is just airtight in goal.
But both of you guys are students of the game. Are the Bruins too old now? I mean, was this their last gasp, or is there enough there, particularly with Bergeron and Pasternak and Bergeron, and maybe Zdeno Chara, to make
Torrey Krug
another run?
Mm-hmm.
Torrey Krug may not be there.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's a huge element of their hockey team. You can take any one of their defensemen, and they've got some good young defensemen, but they don't match up with the playmaking, the ability to quarterback a power play and get pucks out of their zone like Torrey Krug. I still say they've got a window of a couple of years, the Boston Bruins do.
All right.
I don't disagree with that. That's, Bergeron's still such an elegant player. He's still really good at it. Marchand's a driver. He's really good right now. He's only 32. Pasta's only 24. Right. They've got some pieces that are coming. They probably have to rework some things. They'll rework their defense a little bit. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to be like in goal. And, but they've got some other young forwards coming. Like, I really thought Jack Studnicka did a really nice job for them. It was good that they got him some experience. They're going to be around. They're going to be good. But it's going to be hard in their division to stay with Tampa, for anybody to stay with Tampa for a while.
We're with Darren Pang and Jim HUGHSON on the podcast. Let's get to the series here. In the East first, the remaining series, Islanders, Flyers, obviously tied at 3. I doubt many thought the Islanders would go far in this playoff. There were some who thought Philadelphia would. In general, Hughie, are you surprised that we're going to a Game 7? Did you at some point think the Islanders are going to pull another rabbit out of their hat? And now as we go into a Game 7, who's got the advantage?
I'm not sure in Game 7s like this anybody does, really. Maybe an advantage for the Islanders because of omission. If Couturier can't re-enter the series, and it doesn't look to me like he can, because Sean's a pretty important player for Philadelphia. I think I have thought that the Islanders are a little better. I think Carter Hart has, again, been Philadelphia's such good goaltending that, I even thought the Islanders should have won the game last night, but Carter Hart was better than Semyon Varlamov. So I do think there's a bit of an advantage. The structure of the Islanders is incredible, and they're sneaky good. Everybody thinks that they're like the New Jersey Devils and they're trap. They're really good defensively, but their top 2 lines, Matthew Barzal is a star, and he was excellent, and he really drives the line, and they get a ton of chances, and so is Brock Nelson. He's really come a long ways, and he centers the second line. I think the Islanders are a little deeper. Doesn't mean they're going to win the series, because 7th game can be a bit of a crapshoot, but I like the Islanders, and I think that Philadelphia's, I think, done well to stretch this out as long as they have.
Yeah, I've been impressed with. There's a couple of coaches that said the right things at the right times. And Alain Vigneault, after they were down 3-1 in this series, he spoke of great confidence with his top players that were really struggling, and I think he took a little heat off them. They were knocking on the door, so that was great by him. I think Travis Green did the same thing when they were down 3-1. I thought he stood up at the podium, Bob and John and Huey, and he looked confident, and I think the players fed off of that. And so, I like the way the coaches have done things, but at the end of the day, I think the New York Islanders are just a more complete team and a more five-man unit team. And if they continue to get the chance that they're getting on Carter Hart, they're going to win Game 7, in my opinion, because I think they've got more of a team element and more tenacity to their game.
I want to let you back in, John, but I want to ask all three of you guys one question as a follow-up to this before we move on. Can we quantify Lou Lamoriello's influence on this franchise and the success? And I mean, I don't know would you consider it a success if they go out in 7 games now? Maybe.
He wouldn't.
I know he wouldn't. You're right. But what do you think Lamoriello's influence has been on this? Hughie, I'll give it to you first.
I just think personnel. He surrounds himself with, we know how he does his business, and he does it very quietly. He's really organized. He surrounds himself with really good people. He really knows how to bring in influential players. They may not be the best players on the team, but they influence the way the team conducts itself. And that's that's a great area of expertise, and always has been for him. So you get professionals through and through the lineup, whether it's Matt Martin on the 4th line, Leo Komarov on the 3rd line, different things like that Lou does all the time. And of course, he knew which coach to hire and which goaltender to bring in. Those are pretty influential decisions made by Lou.
Hanger, what do you think about Lamoriello?
Well, I just think there's just such a presence about him. There's a loyalty. I know it's probably hard to work for him, or what I've heard if you're inside the offices, because it's business and it's structured. But if you want to be a winner and you want to learn how to be organized and you want to learn how to be a professional and go about your business every day, I think you want to work at some point in your life with Lou Lamoriello. And I think that's I think the other part that he's done really well is if there were players that didn't want to be on Long Island because of what was going on with Brooklyn and Long Island and where they were, that was fine. We'll move along. We're going to take the players that love wearing the Islander crest on their front and not worried about the name on their back, and we're going to move forward like this. So I reiterate what everybody else says. I think he has a major influence on an organization in a very, very positive way.
Structure and credibility. You know, I mean, there are no fringes with Lou. I mean, everything's tucked in properly. You know, it's like going into an army barracks and making sure every bed is made the right way. But the credibility in the marketplace too. Remember, this is a franchise that has floundered in so many ways, off the ice as much. And it just, you know, it coincides now with a new arena coming. It coincides with the with hiring of Barry Trotz and Mitch Korn and his gang of goaltenders, you know, which has been a huge factor for this organization. Bob, you know as well as anybody that we are huge fans of Lou Lamoriello. He can come on here for 20 minutes and never tell you one thing, and you think he's your best friend. But that's Lou.
That's very true.
and what Lou does is he lays it out, he executes the plan, and if it doesn't work, he goes home and says, okay, tomorrow we'll have another plan. And his stability in so many ways, and his personal touch. What we don't understand is his relationship with the players. We don't. You know, as much as we think we do, we don't. All those guys in New Jersey will sell their children for Lou. You know, all those guys on Long Island are learning that. And that's the magic of Lou Lamoriello.
Yeah, you can't beat loyalty, can you?
No. It's amazing. It's amazing how far it will take you in life.
Stars and Avalanche, when this thing started, who did you like? Panger?
Yeah, I like Colorado. Even before it started, you know, Dallas and Boston and St. Louis were 3 teams I looked at in the games before the actual best of 7 started, and they just didn't find their game. They were very inconsistent, and they sputtered to it. So I've been impressed that Dallas is gotten it to this far, especially with the platooning their goaltending. And I think Anton Khudobin, and we've seen a lot of backup goaltenders do terrific work so far. But I think there's a little uncertainty there. And I think there's more certainty, even when Michael Hutchinson, who's been a third, he's been a second guy, he's been an American League guy. I just think Colorado just brings too much to the table. So I like Colorado in the 7th game.
Jim?
I kind of like Colorado too. I really think they've got some guys who influence the game. Not that Dallas doesn't, but maybe in some crazy fashion, having to mess around with your goaltenders, like losing their top guy and having to play a young guy in Francouz, was difficult for Colorado, and it cost them a couple of games. But then to bring in a guy like Michael Hutchinson, even though it's a great story, and even though he hasn't played at the elite level and won Stanley Cups and things like that, having a guy in a little bit of doubt in what's going on in goal has, I think, influenced Colorado to make sure that they insulate him a little more and
tighten it up. Yeah,
and look after him and change their game just a little bit. But their offense is so good. What I would say is the wild card is that as good as I think Colorado is, Dallas has some pieces that are going to be really good for a long time. Like a guy like Denis Gurianov could come out of nowhere and score you a couple of goals in Game 7 and win you a Game 7. Same with Rope Hintz or Miro Heiskanen. They have, like Colorado, really, really good young players. But I would say my edge would go to Colorado right now.
I actually have no confidence in Michael Hutchinson whatsoever. And I agree that, the team defense structure of Colorado has really helped him. But to me, in the end, this isn't about anything Colorado could do, because Nathan MacKinnon has, 9 million points in 15 games. Yeah. This is all on Jamie Benn, Radulov, and Seguin. And if they can actually play the way we expect them to play, and the way in a regular world they're paid to play, then Dallas has a chance to win. But they've been so inconsistent as a line. I mean, Ben's been great physically at times, but they're up and down, and they're up and down. If they can, and we saw this in the first part of the series, when they turned it on, man, oh man, Dallas was going to be tough to beat.
Well, the Faxa line, I mean, it's such a good line too, with Blake Como and with Cogliano too, John. I mean, they're getting more and more minutes. So is this a game that Rick Bowness, maybe gets away from that hard matchup a little bit, as we're talking about before, and let the big boys run a little bit more, and maybe be a little bit more unpredictable? In like every time you look up with Colorado, you look up and there's Nathan MacKinnon, and it might be just a quick shift with the third line, a quick shift with the fourth line, an ozone face-off, and then bang, here comes Cale Makar, not with his regular partner. He's on like. I think there's a lot more pop gun and surprise to Colorado's attack.
Darren, one quick question. Rick Bowness is a good friend of all of ours, and at some point we're going to sit on a golf course patio and have a beer with Rick Bowness. And will he honestly tell us that he made a mistake by letting Ben Bishop play Game 4?
You know what? I don't think he would. And I think these are really difficult internal decisions to make. They were in a back-to-back. Your number one goaltender comes to you and says, "I'm ready to go." So, what you're going to shun him, or is it the right time to get him in there? He practiced well. He just, he didn't look on the ice like I've been told the way he practiced. So, is he going to say it's a mistake? I would hope not. I hope he stays with his the conviction that he made that decision, and that at that point it was the right decision. It didn't work out very well, and it looked bad. But I mean, Ben Bishop could have pitched a shutout, because as we know, when you look at Ben Bishop's history, first game he ever played for the Ottawa Senators, traded by St. Louis, I think he got a shutout. First game he ever played for, Tampa Bay, he got a shutout. He just has that ability to go out there and win 1-0 when you haven't seen him for a little while. But he clearly didn't look as engaged as we've seen him in big moments before.
All right. The last but not least of these series, tied at 3, Vancouver and Vegas. And again, rather surprising.
Yes,
I picked Vegas to win the Stanley Cup. I don't think I was alone. I think there were a lot of people that at least said you're going to have to go through Vegas at some point if you're in the West. And nobody thought Vancouver would maybe not even get here. And it's a great story for those in Vancouver. Vegas on the ice, terms of play, terms of shots, have been dominant, but we're 3-3, and we all know anything can happen in a Game 7. Hughie, where are we at here? I'm sure this is an emerging Vancouver team who has a chance to be good for a while, but are they good enough to overcome this Vegas team that I think is as good as anybody?
They are now in a one-game series, and Thatcher Demko is a real problem for Vegas right now. I get to see it last night. I just was watching it as the game wore on for 2 nights, but especially last night. I thought, this guy's going to be in their head. You know, they can't figure out how to get the puck by Thatcher Demko right now. Whether he can play in back-to-back that same way, I don't know. Here's another question that I just wonder, like, what does Vegas do in goal now? Do you come back in a back-to-back with Robin Lehner?
He's already decided. He's already decided.
It's going to be Lehner?
Yes, absolutely.
Because so that's not, you know, that's back-to-back for him too. There's a lot of these guys that aren't built and have never been put into a situation where they have to play at a high level like that back-to-back. But I think that Vancouver can win, because I think that they have at times looked like they were intimidated in this series, but not in the last couple of games. And Travis Green has got them thinking that, you know, you're not just good enough to play with this team, you're good enough to beat this team. Vegas is bigger, stronger, more experienced. This series should be over, but it's not. And now they got to figure out a way to beat this pesky little team from Vancouver. And they have some stars. Like Elias Pettersson is a star player, and so is Quinn Hughes. And together, they pretty much engineered a 4-0 win last night with a few other things that happened in there. So, yeah, they can win it. This could be a monumental upset.
Hanger, I saw you shaking your head at Lehner playing Game 7. You wouldn't, would you?
No, I would not. I would go back to the flower. This is I think there's an energy level. There's a competitive level. There's a calmness level because he's been there before. I think he's a rallying influence, and I'm talking about Marc-Andre Fleury. And so that's why I would go towards Marc-Andre Fleury for Game 7. This has been really interesting to me. You've got a guy that's an unrestricted free agent. You gave up an asset to get him from Chicago to support you. And the guy, I don't know why when it gets to it that Marc-Andre Fleury keeps getting trampled on. He was their best goalie in Pittsburgh up until Game 1 in Ottawa a few years ago. And the moment that he made a mistake with a puck that goes off the end boards, the moment he made that mistake, he was out the door. He was probably the Conn Smythe Trophy leader at that point. And for whatever reason, he's never given that second opportunity. And so anyway, I would go with Marc-Andre Fleury. That's just me. He plays the puck better. He gives you the one save that can just change the momentum of a game. And I think the big fellow Robin is getting deep in his net and not looking as foundation wise as strong as he did early on. And well, isn't it something too? That, yeah, go ahead.
No, I just said, but Darren, do I have to tell you
when you start going, people, Darren?
No, I have to tell you of all people, coaches have decided that big players play the position. That's what they've decided.
I thought we were talking about Braden Point a little while ago.
I'm not talking. Braden Point is not a good goalie.
He could probably be a good goalie.
Pete DeBoer had it in his mind 2 months ago. I'm going with my big guy.
It reminds me of when Pete DeBoer kind of, tried to get Marty Brodeur out, off to the side there. And it was not about the goaltender or the individual. It was about his system and the way he played.
Yes.
But I think there's a time and a place to put that aside and get the best goaltender for me in Game 7 for the Vegas Golden Knights is Marc-Andre Fleury.
Well, and I agree. I'm with you. Go ahead.
Well, I'm interested in what Panger thinks of Thatcher Demko. Like he's another big blocker with some athleticism. But I wonder in this situation how he'll deal with back-to-back given the workload.
I mean, it's always a good question, and now the pressure's really on. It is Game 7, fun moment to be in, but it is funny that the St. Louis Blues could not find an answer for Markstrom. Vancouver picked apart Jordan Binnington, and now Vegas picked apart Markstrom, and now they can't find an answer for Thatcher Demko. I mean, it's a great story, and I think that the way that Vegas shoots pucks, I think that they're very disciplined in their video scouting, and they found something against Markstrom. And maybe Markstrom's injury had something to do with that. Thatcher Demko doesn't play the way Markstrom plays. He does play, as you said, a lot more athletic. In this first game that he played, he was actually out of position a few times and got rather fortunate, and he gained a little momentum that way. Last night, there was a different story last night. That was a real good clinic on goaltending and battling and coming out. And I do believe he's in Vegas's head. I believe that Vegas is going to have to make some alterations to the way they shoot pucks and get him to commit a little bit more and have more plays off to the side, because I think he can be aggressive that way. But anyway, those Thatcher Demko versus Marc-Andre Fleury would be a great matchup here for Game 7.
Well, I think they've already told Lehner he's playing. I really do. I think they would have probably told him after the game last night and go from there. Though the other thing about this matchup, and Jim, you touched on about how great Hughes has been, and there's no argument, and Pettersson's been, but all of a sudden now, Brock Besser's back playing well. All of a sudden, JT Miller, that trade that Vancouver fans were shocked that Jim Benning made for JT Miller,
I can't believe they were shocked about that.
No, but a first round pick. But JT,
first round pick for JT Miller, he's unbelievable.
Well, but you know how hockey fans can get, and this is a team that is really well constructed now, and if they can avoid their injuries, Chris Tanev has actually stayed healthy this series, which to me is amazing. This is a team that's playing solid everywhere. They're using their depth, and by scoring first, they changed the game plan for Vegas, because then all of a sudden DeBoer can't put Ryan Reeves out to become that intimidating factor. And so that Canuck goal early in Game 6 last night changed a ton of the perspective. It changed a ton of the perspective in the game that Vancouver won, which was early, which was Game 2. And it just, there's no chirp. We didn't see any chirping last night. We didn't see any chirping in that Game 2, because it changes the whole attitude if the Canucks can get a lead.
The veteran guys that they brought in too, now they've got some real star power up front in Vancouver now, and we've talked about that. And that, and Quinn Hughes they tried to intimidate him early, and I think they might have hurt him, but he alluded to it in the press conference last night that he's actually feeling better, and so he was better last night. But they get criticized a lot for going after guys like Brandon Sutter and Jay Beagle. And what's Tyler Mott? What does he do? But those guys have really made a huge contribution. Their experience, they win face-offs, they kill penalties, all of the things that are really important in a series. So we shouldn't downplay the contribution that they've made, and their depth defensemen have done the same thing. So they've overcome quite a bit here. And the thing about what I always think about playoffs, and my partner Simmer and I are always talking about this, when you start a playoff with guys who have never been in a playoff, we always talk about, Jesus, they've got no experience at all. These guys have got a whole bunch of experience now. They've played in some big games and playoff games, and there's nothing scarier than guys who feel like they belong and think that they belong. And you can really tell that the way they're playing right now, that these young Canucks think, yeah, we're here, we're competitive, we can win.
Jimmy, do you think, and fellas, do you think that playing St. Louis in the first round, whether they won or lost, was just such a good experience to know what the defending champs, how they prepared, how they played, the style of play, and how resilient Vancouver was, and in particular Quinn Hughes, because, I mean, let's face it, the Blues' goal was to run the D out of the rink. Sure. And by the time they got to Game 6 or 7, they felt like they could create those turnovers, or maybe they'd be on their heels a little bit. But that Quinn Hughes said something after Game 2 or 3 in that series, and I was really impressed with it when he said, it's an honor that they're targeting me. And the way he said it was like, wow, what a way to say that. And then for him to, every time he got hit, he just had this smile on his face, and his helmet was a little crooked, but he just kept going. And how important it was for their young players to go through that, whether they won or lost.
No, it's feeling like you belong. I mean, these are the guys who won the Stanley Cup championship. And then and to your point, having played St. Louis and defeated St. Louis, Vegas is a very similar team, and come at them the same kind of way there. Let's just intimidate the heck out of these guys. We'll run them out of the rink. We'll wear them down over 6, and they'll be gone. And maybe earlier than that. So, yeah, I don't think you can underestimate that experience at all.
The other thing is, I would tell you, on and off the ice, the Vancouver Canucks made the right choice in picking a captain, because Bo Horvat, I mean, whether it was through the through the protest, or through that St. Louis series where Bo was the best player on the ice, I mean, this guy has has elevated on so many different levels, and has put himself in great stead. And here we are. We can sit here and talk about the Canucks the way we do, and we can actually forget some of the guys that have made a difference because everybody's contributed.
Yeah.
Everybody's contributed. That's the amazing part of what I've seen with Vancouver.
And last year, I'm wearing my Red Tails shirt. You see that,
I noticed that. I noticed
that?
Yeah.
And that's where I met Bo and his dad out there last year so I thought I'd wear this on that behalf. I knew you'd bring up Bo Horvat.
I was going to bring up the golf shirt anyway at one point. Don't worry.
Yeah,
You're trying to get free rounds there, eh, Bob?
I'm sure you paid for it.
Just for hey, Bob, for the record, if Darren Pang is not holding a golf club in his hand, he's always holding a multicolored pen. And what do you got in your hand right now? The multicolored pen.
That's amazing. Oh, jeez. That's great.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I got to tell you, I love all you guys, and you're a lot smarter about the sport than I am. I give you that. But
here we go. We're in trouble now.
Well, I mean, this captain crap and the influence of a guy being named captain. He's a very good player, and he can be influential whether you got a C on your jersey or not. So I'm tired of that argument that I've been listening.
Bob, you were never a captain. I can tell you were never a captain. They always passed you over. Even though you were the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I was a captain on this ship for 40 years, and you pretty much did what you were told.
Okay, Captain.
And I'll give you the other one. So here's the other one. The other one is. Can Lehner come back and play 2 games in a row? Honest to God, I've had it with that argument. Do you think anybody mentioned to Glenn Hall, Glenn, you think you can play game 499 or 500 or 502 in a row, or are you a little pooped?
I am so glad you brought that up. Because I'm with you all the way. Every player, the player that plays 30 minutes a night, you're gonna rest Chara because they're going back to back?
Of course not.
I mean, come on. And when the goalie's in a groove, when you're in a groove and you're seeing that puck come at you slowly, the last thing you want to do is take a break. You want to stay in that net anyway because you're at the height of your focus and your vision on the ice.
Players want to play.
Of course they do, but the only thing is that the coaches have taken that out of our game, so all of those guys don't have any experience at it. That's why we bring it up as a question mark. Can he do it? Because nobody ever asks them to do it.
Right. Well, I do get that, and I relate that a lot to. And here's another one of my crazy old man philosophies. Well, if I was a baseball manager, I'd go back to a 4-man rotation. And nobody's going to do it. In fact, now in this COVID thing, there's 6 and 7 guys in a rotation, and they only pitch 4 or 5 innings.
So then, tell me what you think about pitch counts.
Nothing. Nolan Ryan threw 1,000,000 miles an hour all night long and had plenty of games where he threw 140 pitches, and he pitched until he was in his mid-40s.
Yeah.
His arm didn't come off. Yeah. Look.
And Jimmy Houston's done 38 games in a row, and his voice hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, you need a night off, Hughie? Are you too tired to go in there again tonight?
I want game 7 off tomorrow. I can't go back to
that. Well, you're not a former goaltender, are you, by any chance?
Obviously, somebody's not getting paid by the game. So,
salaried employee, bad news. There's no invoice, is there?
Oh. All right, before we wrap this sucker up, give me your final 4. Hughie, to you first.
Islanders, Tampa, and Vancouver, Dallas. Just to be contrarian.
I like the Tampa pick. I'm pretty sure you're okay with that one, but I don't know about the others. Well,
like upsets in this environment.
Yeah, I'll go Vegas and Colorado and Tampa Bay and the Islanders. I think that Colorado will find a way. Vegas, if they continue to get this many chances, if the Islanders continue to get that many chances, then I think the odds are with them to go forward. But I will say this, Jim, Vancouver totally has impressed me in every facet, in the way that Travis has dealt with his players, and the way that the JT Miller's probably got that C, even though he doesn't have it. We're talking about captains and non-captains. His influence in that locker room cannot be question whatsoever. The guy's a phenomenal leader and a big time player. So I really like the team. I like the way they play. 2 years ago, I saw a 3-on-3 with the Vancouver Canucks. It was at the end of the year. It was in St. Louis. St. Louis was already in the playoffs, and overtime started. Quinn Hughes was on with Brock Besser and with Pettersson. The Blues never touched the puck, and I said, if this is what the future looks like for the Vancouver Canucks, they're in pretty darn good shape. Well, they're in pretty darn good shape, whether they win or lose this one.
Chandler, throw your 2 cents in.
All I know is that for next season's prognostications, the Vancouver Canucks are coming out of the West. I think Vancouver can win Game 7. I think Colorado will win Game 7. And I think we're all in the same boat because we trust Barry Trotz and his system. So it's Islanders, Tampa, but Canucks and Avalanche.
Guys,
I have to say, I live in Vancouver, and if my neighbors are watching this production and I don't pick the Vancouver Canucks, I'm afraid for my car.
It's a good point, Jimmy. Good point.
Why do you have Washington State plates or something? What is that?
No, they just know where I live.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were in White Rock. Are you not in White Rock?
Well, it's an extension of
No, it's not.
Oh.
It's that general area. Have some pride for your little town.
Bob,
there.
when was the last time you were in White Rock, Bob?
30 years ago, maybe.
Things have changed since then, I think.
A little bit in Vegas.
I doubt it. Still got Mud Bay?
Mud Bay's still there.
See, nothing changes. It's
President Mud Bay Productions.
There you go.
And the dog goes out when the tide is out and gets filthy when you run him in the bay, right? And then you got to give him a bath every other day. So I get it.
As long as there's nice cold kokanee beer, I'm all set. Wherever, Jimmy, I'll come visit you.
I hear you.
Okay, so Darren, you got a free round of golf, and now you got free beer. That's good.
Guys,
I try my best. I'm an ambassador of sorts.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Hughie. Keep at it. Panger, hit it straight.
Yeah. Thanks, big boy. Appreciate it.
And maybe we'll, who knows? Maybe we'll talk again once we get to the final. We'd enjoy that if you guys are available.
I would as well.
Yeah,
Thanks,
sounds
Bob.
good. Jimmy, keep up the great work. See you, boys.
Thanks, guys.
That's
Good
it for
to
the
see you.
podcast. For John Shannon, Bob McCown. See you Monday.